Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest stories. And let us know where you're watching from by leaving your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for your support. Ryan Mitchell thought he was about to embarrass a quiet stranger in front of an entire gym. 20 minutes later, he would be questioning every assumption he had made. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments below. And if you believe respect should never be based on appearances, be sure to like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us why character matters. Now, back to Emily Carter. The morning sunlight poured through the towering glass windows of Iron Legacy Fitness, one of the most exclusive gyms in downtown Denver. Chrome machines gleamed beneath rows of modern lights. Massive banners showcasing championship athletes hung from the walls. Every detail of the facility was designed to signal prestige, success, and status. For many members, working out there was as much about being seen as it was about exercise. Ryan Mitchell knew that better than anyone. At 36 years old, he was the gym's most recognizable trainer. His social media following exceeded 500,000 people. His classes were always full, and many members treated him more like a celebrity than a coach. Ryan enjoyed the attention. In fact, he had built an entire identity around it. That was why he immediately noticed Emily Carter the moment she stepped through the front doors. She looked completely out of place. At least, that was what Ryan believed. Emily wore a plain gray hoodie, black workout pants, and a pair of worn white sneakers. No designer labels. No expensive accessories. No attempt to draw attention to herself. Her blonde hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her expression remained calm as she quietly scanned the room. She moved with an almost invisible presence, the kind of person most people would overlook without a second thought. Several members near the entrance glanced at her before quickly returning to their conversations. One woman raised an eyebrow. Another exchanged a smirk. With her friend, Emily seemed not to notice. Or perhaps she simply didn't care. She checked in at the front desk, thanked the receptionist with a polite smile, and walked toward a quiet corner of the facility. Ryan watched from across the gym. Something about her annoyed him immediately. Maybe it was her confidence. Maybe it was the fact that she appeared completely uninterested in impressing anyone. Whatever the reason, he couldn't look away. As Emily set down her gym bag near a stretching area, Ryan noticed several members of the Titan Circle watching her as well. The Titan Circle was an unofficial group of the gym's wealthiest and most influential members. They occupied the center of the facility like royalty. Expensive watches, luxury vehicles, constant competition. They believed Iron Legacy belonged to them. And whenever someone new walked through those doors, they decided very quickly whether that person deserved to be there. Emily Carter had already failed their test. What none of them knew was that the quiet woman standing alone near the far wall carried a secret that would soon change everything. Not because she planned to prove anything. Not because she wanted attention. But because arrogance has a way of creating its own downfall. And on this particular morning, that downfall had already begun. Emily spent the next several minutes exactly the way most people expected her to. She stretched quietly, adjusted the settings on a treadmill, and moved through a simple warm-up routine without drawing attention to herself. To the members of the Titan Circle, that was all the confirmation they needed. Their first impressions had already become facts in their minds. Near the center of the gym, Ryan leaned casually against a cable machine while several members gathered around him. Laughter drifted across the polished floor as they discussed upcoming fitness competitions, luxury vacations, and the latest performance supplements. Every few moments, someone glanced toward Emily. Each glance carried the same unspoken conclusion. She did not belong. A woman named Vanessa Reed, one of the most outspoken members of the group, followed Emily with her eyes before shaking her head. "First week of January energy," she said with a laugh. "People sign up, buy new shoes, stay for 2 weeks, then disappear." Several people chuckled. Ryan smirked. "Maybe give her 3 weeks," he replied. "She looks determined." More laughter followed. None of them lowered their voices enough to prevent Emily from hearing. Yet she never reacted. She continued her routine with calm precision, almost as if the comments were happening in another room. That composure only seemed to frustrate Ryan further. Across the facility, other members began noticing the situation. Some watched with amusement. Others looked uncomfortable. Iron Legacy attracted successful people, But success did not always produce kindness. Emily eventually moved toward the free weight section. The area was considered unofficial territory for the Titan Circle. It was where they filmed content, challenged one another, and displayed their achievements. As she approached, conversation slowed. Ryan noticed immediately. His eyes narrowed slightly. Emily selected a pair of dumbbells from the rack and began a controlled exercise routine. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just steady, deliberate movements. Yet there was something unusual about the way she moved. Her posture remained perfect. Her balance never shifted. Her breathing stayed measured and consistent. An older member named Frank Donovan quietly observed from nearby. Frank had spent 30 years coaching college athletes before retiring. He studied Emily for several moments before raising an eyebrow. There was something familiar in her discipline, something that did not match the image everyone else had assigned to her. Meanwhile, Ryan saw only an opportunity. The Titan Circle was preparing for one of their weekly challenges, a public event where members competed in front of spectators. Winners earned bragging rights and plenty of social media attention. Ryan loved being the center of those moments. As he glanced toward Emily once more, a thought crossed his mind, an idea that immediately drew a grin across his face. Vanessa noticed it. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Ryan folded his arms. "I think today's challenge just got more interesting." Several members followed his gaze and quickly understood. Smiles spread around the group. Some exchanged knowing looks. Others pulled out their phones. The atmosphere began to shift. What started as casual judgment was slowly becoming something larger, something public, something designed to entertain everyone except the person at its center. And while the Titan Circle prepared their next move, Emily continued her workout in complete silence, seemingly unaware that an entire plan was beginning to form around her. Ryan waited until enough people had gathered before making his move. He understood attention better than almost anyone in the building. Attention was currency. Attention was influence. And at Iron Legacy Fitness, influence meant everything. He stepped onto the small performance platform near the center of the free weight area and clapped his hands once. The sharp sound echoed across the room. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. Several members immediately reached for their phones. They had seen this routine before. Whenever Ryan organized an impromptu challenge, entertainment usually followed. "All right, everyone," Ryan announced with a confident smile. "Looks like we have enough people for today's Titan Challenge." A few cheers erupted from nearby members. Vanessa raised her phone and began recording. Others quickly followed. The familiar excitement spread through the gym. Ryan thrived on moments like this. He scanned the crowd before letting his gaze settle on Emily. She was still exercising quietly, seemingly focused on her own routine. "Excuse me," Ryan called out loudly. "Ma'am." Several people immediately looked toward Emily. She paused and turned. The entire room seemed to pivot in her direction. Ryan smiled as if he were offering a generous opportunity. "You look like you have been working hard this morning. Why not join us?" Emily glanced around, realizing dozens of eyes were suddenly on her. "I am fine, thank you," she replied politely. Ryan nodded dramatically. "Come on. It is just a little friendly competition." Laughter drifted through the crowd. Not cruel enough to sound openly hostile. Not yet. But there was an unmistakable edge beneath it. Emily remained calm. "I appreciate the offer, but I am just here for my workout." Vanessa exchanged a grin with another member. "Maybe she is nervous," she said loudly enough for others to hear. A few chuckles followed. Ryan pretended to defend Emily. "Hey, no judgment. Everyone starts somewhere." More laughter. The words sounded supportive on the surface, but the condescension beneath them was impossible to miss. Even some spectators who barely knew Emily began shifting uncomfortably. Frank Donovan folded his arms and frowned. He had witnessed enough locker room arrogance during his coaching career to recognize what was happening. Ryan was creating a spectacle, and Emily was the target. "Tell you what," Ryan continued. "If you participate, everyone here gets a free smoothie from me after the challenge." The crowd reacted immediately. Cheers erupted. Phones rose higher. Suddenly, dozens of people wanted Emily to accept. The pressure became public, visible, deliberate. Emily looked around the room. Some faces appeared amused. Others looked curious. A few seemed embarrassed on her behalf. Through it all, she noticed Ryan watching her carefully, waiting, hoping she would decline, hoping the crowd would interpret it as weakness. For a moment, Silence settled over the gym. Then Emily surprised everyone. She offered a small smile. Not nervous, not offended, just calm. All right, she said softly. If it means everyone gets their smoothies, I can participate. The room erupted with excitement. Ryan's grin widened instantly. Everything was unfolding exactly as he had planned. Or at least, that was what he believed. Because while the crowd celebrated what they expected to be a harmless joke, none of them noticed the subtle shift in Frank Donovan's expression. The retired coach had been studying Emily since she arrived. And for the first time all morning, he looked genuinely concerned. Not for Emily, for Ryan. Ryan stepped onto the platform and raised both hands for silence. The excitement in the room settled into a low hum as dozens of members formed a loose circle around the challenge area. Phones remained pointed toward the center. Some people were already streaming. Others were sending messages to friends inside the gym. The atmosphere felt less like a workout and more like a live event. Emily walked forward at an unhurried pace and stopped beside the platform. Her expression remained composed. She did not appear nervous. She did not appear excited. If anything, she looked mildly curious about what Ryan had planned. Ryan interpreted that calmness as confidence without experience, something he had seen many times before. In his mind, the outcome was already decided. Since we have a special guest joining us today, Ryan announced, drawing laughter from several members, we will keep things simple. More smiles spread through the crowd. Vanessa stood near the front, recording every second. Ryan pointed toward a row of equipment positioned near the center of the floor. The challenge is all about control, endurance, and consistency, he explained. 3 rounds. Nothing complicated. Emily nodded politely. Sounds reasonable. The simplicity of her response caught Ryan off guard for a moment. Most people either became defensive or overly competitive when placed under a spotlight. Emily did neither. She simply listened. Ryan quickly recovered. I will go first so everyone understands the format. Cheers erupted immediately. Several members called out his name. Ryan smiled and stepped into position. Over the next few minutes, he completed the demonstration with the confidence of someone performing for an audience he knew would applaud. The crowd reacted exactly as expected. Every repetition earned encouragement. Every movement generated approval. When he finished, a wave of applause rolled through the gym. Ryan accepted it like a performer taking a bow. Then he turned toward Emily. Your turn. The crowd shifted. Phones adjusted. Anticipation filled the air. Emily quietly removed her gray hoodie and folded it neatly beside her gym bag. Nothing about her appearance changed the assumptions people had already made. She still looked like an ordinary woman who preferred comfort over attention. Ryan folded his arms and watched closely. Vanessa whispered to a friend, "This is going to be painful." Nearby, Frank Donovan remained silent. His eyes never left Emily. She stepped into position and looked over the equipment for several seconds. Not because she seemed uncertain. Quite the opposite. She appeared to be evaluating details that nobody else noticed. Distances, angles, adjustments, tiny things that most participants would ignore. Frank's concern deepened. The same thought returned to him. He had seen that kind of focus before. Not in beginners. Not in casual gym members. In elite competitors. Around the room, the laughter slowly faded as people sensed something unusual. Emily took a slow breath and settled into position. Ryan noticed the change as well, though he could not explain it. For the first time all morning, a faint feeling of uncertainty touched the edge of his confidence. It lasted only a second before he dismissed it. After all, this was his gym, his audience, and his challenge. What Ryan did not realize was that the room was about to witness the first crack in the story everyone had created about Emily Carter. And once that crack appeared, the entire illusion would begin to fall apart. The gym grew unusually quiet as Emily began the challenge. Moments earlier, people had been laughing, whispering, and placing imaginary limits on what they believed she could accomplish. Now they watched. At first, nobody understood why the atmosphere had changed. Emily had not said anything dramatic. She had not bragged. She had not revealed some impressive accomplishment. She simply started moving. Yet there was something different about the way she approached every task. Every motion appeared deliberate. Every adjustment seemed calculated. There was no wasted effort. No attempt to impress the audience. No glance toward the cameras. She behaved as though the crowd did not exist. Ryan stood nearby with his arms folded, expecting the performance to fall apart at any moment. Instead, the opposite happened. Emily completed the opening portion of the challenge with remarkable consistency. Her breathing never became erratic. Her posture remained steady. Her focus never wavered. Several members exchanged confused looks. Vanessa lowered her phone slightly. The smile she had been wearing since the challenge began started to fade. Across the room, Frank Donovan felt a knot tightening in his stomach. He had seen this before. Years ago, during national competitions, elite athletes often displayed the same quiet efficiency. They never appeared rushed. They never seemed desperate to prove themselves. Their confidence came from preparation, not performance. Emily reminded him of those competitors. More importantly, she reminded him of someone he had watched many years earlier. A memory lingered just beyond reach. As Emily moved into the second phase of the challenge, conversations disappeared completely. The room had entered a different state. Curiosity replaced amusement. People who had initially gathered for entertainment were now studying her with genuine interest. Ryan noticed it too. He could feel the crowd slipping away from him. The attention that usually belonged to him was slowly shifting toward the woman he had expected to embarrass. That realization irritated him more than he wanted to admit. "Not bad," Ryan said loudly, forcing a smile. "Better than I expected." Emily glanced at him politely. "Thank you." Then she returned her focus to the challenge. The simplicity of her response somehow made Ryan feel even smaller. There was no sarcasm, no attempt to score points, just sincerity. Around them, phones continued recording. Yet many of the people filming no longer looked excited about capturing a failure. Instead, they seemed eager to discover who Emily Carter really was. The question began spreading through the crowd. New member? Former athlete? Professional trainer? Nobody knew. Even the front desk staff exchanged puzzled looks. Emily had registered under a basic membership package and provided almost no personal information. She had arrived like an ordinary customer. But ordinary no longer seemed like the correct word. As she approached the final stage of the challenge, a strange tension settled over the room. It was the kind of silence that appears just before people realize they may have misunderstood everything. Ryan still believed he controlled the situation. He still believed he could explain away whatever happened next. But the first seeds of doubt had already been planted. And once doubt enters a room filled with arrogance, certainty begins to crumble. Emily stepped into the final phase of the challenge with the same calm focus she had shown from the beginning. By now, the atmosphere inside Iron Legacy Fitness had completely transformed. The laughter was gone. The whispered jokes had disappeared. Even the constant clatter of equipment seemed quieter than usual. Dozens of people stood watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Ryan tried to maintain his confident expression, but the certainty that had fueled him all morning was beginning to fade. He glanced around the room and noticed something he had never expected. The crowd was no longer looking at him for guidance. They were watching Emily. Every movement she made commanded attention. Every decision sparked curiosity. She had become the center of the story without ever asking for it. Emily completed the next sequence with remarkable precision. Not flashy, not dramatic, just efficient. The kind of performance that revealed years of discipline hidden beneath a simple appearance. A murmur spread through the crowd. Vanessa lowered her phone completely. "There is no way," she whispered. Nearby, two members exchanged confused looks. "How is she doing that?" one asked. Nobody answered. Frank Donovan felt his pulse quicken. The memory that had been lingering at the edge of his mind suddenly became clearer. Years ago, he had attended a national training exhibition featuring some of the most accomplished athletes in the country. One competitor had stood out because of her unusual style. She never chased attention. She never celebrated. She simply performed with quiet mastery. Frank stared at Emily. The resemblance was becoming impossible to ignore. Ryan noticed Frank's expression. "What?" he asked quietly. Frank did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on Emily. "I think you should be careful about assuming you know who she is," he finally said. Ryan laughed, but the sound lacked confidence. Before he could respond, a wave of reaction moved through the crowd. Emily had just completed the final portion of the challenge. Not only had she matched Ryan's performance, she had surpassed it. The difference was not enormous, but it was undeniable. Several people immediately checked the posted challenge results. Others reviewed their recordings. A stunned silence settled across the gym. Ryan stared at the display. He blinked once, then twice, certain that he had misunderstood what he was seeing. But the numbers remained unchanged. Emily had finished with a higher score. The room remained frozen. Nobody seemed quite sure how to react. Finally, someone near the back began clapping. Another person joined. Then another. Within seconds, applause spread throughout the gym. Not loud and explosive. Genuine. Respectful. Earned. Emily looked almost embarrassed by the attention. She offered a small smile and stepped away from the platform. She had no interest in celebrating. No interest in humiliating anyone. Yet her quiet victory carried more weight than any speech could have. Ryan stood motionless as the realization settled over him. The challenge he had created to expose weakness had accomplished the exact opposite. It had exposed something else entirely. And for the first time that morning, he found himself wondering whether the woman he had underestimated was hiding far more than extraordinary ability. The applause gradually faded, but the tension inside Iron Legacy Fitness remained. People were no longer talking about the challenge. They were talking about Emily. Small groups formed throughout the gym as members replayed recordings on their phones and exchanged theories. Some insisted she must have been a former college athlete. Others guessed she had worked as a professional trainer somewhere else. Nobody seemed satisfied with their explanation. The performance they had just witnessed felt too polished, too effortless. Emily quietly walked toward her gym bag and reached for a water bottle. She looked exactly the same as she had when she first entered the building. The difference was that now everyone was looking at her differently. Ryan remained near the platform, struggling to regain control of the situation. He forced a smile and congratulated a few participants, but his attention kept drifting back toward Emily. The challenge was supposed to reinforce his reputation. Instead, it had created questions he could not answer. Then something unexpected happened. One of the younger members stepped forward while scrolling through his phone. "Wait a second," he said. His voice immediately caught the attention of several nearby members. "I think I know who she is." The room seemed to pause. Vanessa walked over first. "What are you talking about?" The young man enlarged an image on his screen. "My dad used to follow national competitions years ago. He made me watch them all the time." He looked back and forth between the photo and Emily. "I swear that is her." Vanessa grabbed the phone. Her expression changed almost instantly. The image showed a younger woman standing on a podium during a major athletic event. The hairstyle was different. The clothing was different. But the face was unmistakable. "No way," Vanessa whispered. More people gathered around the screen. Ryan stepped closer. The image included a headline beneath it. "National Champion Emily Carter." The words hit the room like a sudden gust of wind. Several people immediately searched the name themselves. Within seconds, more photographs appeared. Competition results. Interviews. Magazine features from years earlier. A remarkable career that had largely disappeared from public view. The realization spread through the gym with astonishing speed. Emily had not simply performed well. She had once competed at the highest levels in the country. Ryan stared at the screen, then toward Emily, then back at the screen again. His confidence continued slipping away. Everything suddenly made sense. The flawless technique. The composure. The discipline. The complete absence of nerves. She had not been a beginner walking into unfamiliar territory. She had been someone who had already mastered it years ago. Across the room, Emily noticed the growing crowd around the phones. She immediately understood what had happened. A faint expression of disappointment crossed her face. Not because people knew, because she had hoped they would not care. Frank Donovan slowly shook his head and smiled. The memory had finally returned. He remembered watching her compete years ago. He remembered the same quiet focus, the same refusal to seek attention. But even Frank suspected there was still more to the story. Because despite the shock spreading through the gym, Emily herself seemed completely uninterested in the discovery. And people who have nothing left to prove are often hiding the biggest surprises of all. The discovery should have been the end of the story. For most people in the room, learning that Emily Carter had once been a national champion explained everything. The mystery seemed solved. The challenge made sense. The quiet confidence made sense. The flawless performance made sense. Yet something still felt incomplete. Ryan sensed it. Frank sensed it. Even Vanessa, who had spent the entire morning judging Emily, could not shake the feeling that there was another piece nobody had uncovered. Emily picked up her water bottle and gym bag, clearly intending to return to her workout, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. The attention surrounding her appeared to make her uncomfortable. She had no interest in reliving old accomplishments. She had spent years moving away from that spotlight. Unfortunately for her, fate had different plans. The sound of the main entrance opening drew several heads toward the front of the gym. A tall man in a dark suit entered alongside two managers from the corporate office. Conversations immediately quieted. Even members who did not know his name recognized his importance. This was Michael Lawson, the chief executive officer of Iron Legacy Fitness, the man whose vision had transformed a single location into one of the fastest-growing fitness brands in the country. Employees straightened instantly. Managers hurried toward him. Ryan looked surprised. Executive visits were rare. Unannounced visits were even rarer. Michael walked calmly through the facility while speaking with one of the managers. Then his eyes landed on Emily. He stopped mid-sentence. The manager beside him continued talking for another second before realizing Michael was no longer listening. The entire room watched as Michael changed direction and walked straight toward Emily. Ryan immediately assumed the chief executive officer had recognized the former champion. That alone would have been impressive enough. But what happened next left the room completely silent. Michael extended his hand and smiled warmly. "Good to see you again, partner Carter." The words seemed to echo through the gym. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Several phones lowered simultaneously. Ryan blinked as though he had misheard. "Partner?" Michael continued speaking naturally. "I heard you might stop by today, but nobody mentioned which location." Emily sighed softly and shook his hand. "I was hoping to keep a low profile." Michael laughed. "That has never been one of your strengths, despite how hard you try." Confused whispers spread through the crowd. Vanessa looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Frank. Frank simply stared ahead in disbelief. One of the managers finally spoke. "Most of our newer members probably do not know this," he said carefully. Emily Carter was one of the original investors when Iron Legacy opened its first facility. The room froze. The revelation hit harder than the earlier discovery. Emily was not simply a former champion. She was not merely an exceptional athlete. She was one of the people responsible for building the very company standing around them. Ryan felt the color drain from his face. The woman he had publicly mocked. The woman he had treated like an outsider. The woman he had turned into a joke for the crowd. She had helped create the opportunity that had built his entire career. And for the second time that day, the room found itself speechless. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The silence hanging over Iron Legacy Fitness felt heavier than any applause that had filled the building earlier. Ryan stood frozen near the platform, replaying every moment of the morning in his mind. The jokes, the assumptions, the challenge, the confidence with which he had believed he understood Emily Carter. One by one, those memories now felt unbearable. Around him, members of the Titan Circle avoided eye contact. Vanessa stared at the floor. Others suddenly became fascinated with their phones. The same people who had laughed only an hour earlier now seemed desperate to disappear into the crowd. Michael Lawson glanced around the room and quickly understood what had happened. Years of leadership had taught him how to read a room. He saw the embarrassment on some faces, the regret on others, and the discomfort spreading through the gym. Then he looked at Emily. "I assume there is a story behind this," he said carefully. Emily smiled faintly. "Nothing important." The answer somehow made the situation worse. She was protecting people who had not shown her the same courtesy. Ryan finally stepped forward. The confidence that usually defined him was gone. "Emily," he began, his voice noticeably quieter, "I owe you an apology." The room watched closely. "I judged you before I knew anything about you. I turned you into a joke. And I was wrong." No cameras moved. No one interrupted. For the first time all day, every word felt genuine. Emily studied him for a moment. She could have embarrassed him. She could have reminded everyone exactly how he had treated her. She could have demanded consequences. Instead, she simply nodded. "Thank you," she said. Ryan looked surprised. "That is it." Emily smiled. What else should there be? The simplicity of the response left him speechless. Michael folded his arms and watched with quiet interest. Emily picked up her gym bag and slipped her water bottle inside. "When we opened the first location," she said calmly, looking around the room, "we had one goal. We wanted a place where people could become stronger without feeling judged." Nobody moved. Nobody even looked away. The equipment matters. The training matters. Results matter. But none of those things matter more than respect. Her words were soft, yet they carried through the entire gym. You never know who walks through a door. You never know what they have accomplished. You never know what they are carrying. So treat everyone well before you know their story. A hush fell over the room. Even Michael Lawson appeared impressed. Emily was not giving a speech. She was simply stating a truth most people had forgotten. She slung her bag over her shoulder and started toward the exit. No dramatic celebration followed. No grand farewell. Just a quiet woman walking away exactly as she had arrived. As the doors closed behind her, nobody rushed to fill the silence. Ryan remained standing beside the platform, staring toward the entrance long after she was gone. The Titan Circle stood quietly around him. And throughout Iron Legacy Fitness, one lesson lingered long after the morning ended. Real strength rarely announces itself. Arrogance usually does. And that day, everyone in the room remembered what dignity looks like.